As you know, I've served on the Venice Main Street now for about 4 years, I think. And I just want to clarify that the jurisdiction of Venice Main Street isn't just West Venice Avenue. Venice Main Street actually has jurisdiction under its charter all the way to the bypass on East Venice Avenue as well. I think I can safely say that most of the people belong to Venice Main Street who operate businesses downtown, who own property and are landlords, are, if not unanimously, very much in favor of some high-quality mixed use in this particular area. I, for one, have always been in favor of mixed use in this area, especially if it includes a hotel and a restaurant and some other amenities that I think we all agree we need here in Venice. However, when I first looked at this project, it was very clear to me that height and the mass of the building and the structure were going to be critical issues. If you look at the surrounding area, just take the downtown, talk about the commercial business district, that height in the commercial business district is 35 feet with an additional 10 feet by conditional use only. If you look at the commercial intensive zoning district, which this is right now, that's 35 feet. If you look at what is being requested in this proposal, you've got 2.5 acres with a 80-story building, or 4 80-story buildings with some openings in between them, occupying almost every square inch of the property, adjacent to 1- and 2-story buildings. If you look across the street on Business 41, you see 1- and 2-story buildings. If you look down Venice Avenue, you see 1- and 2-story buildings. The clear question is whether or not this project is compatible with the surrounding area and the adjacent properties. If you look at the ordinance that we passed, and I'm not going to argue about the ordinance, it is the law. It states very clearly, and I'm just going to quote from it, the City Council may allow building height up to 80 feet when the site is deemed to be conducive to additional height without negatively impacting adjacent properties. The granting of additional building height greater than 35 feet requires a finding that such granting will not adversely affect the public interest and that satisfactory provision and arrangements have been made concerning the following matters. And a number of them are listed, but I'll point out a few that are relevant to this issue. Item B, general compatibility with adjacent properties and other properties in the district. Item C, scale of development, the relationship of the project or development in terms of its size, height, bulk, massing, intensity, and aesthetics to its surroundings. Item J, building height shall transition from the maximum building height to a lower height when directly adjacent to lower intensity residential and commercial land uses, waterways, or designated height restrictive overlays. So it seems clear to me that we are squarely confronting, and we need to discuss the issue of compatibility with the adjacent and the surrounding areas downtown. And is this compatible? That's the question we have to decide. Is 80 feet compatible with 1- and 2-story buildings and a maximum of 35 feet adjacent or in near proximity to this building? And we're not talking about a small building here. We're talking one with 140 condominiums in it, almost 1,500 square foot condominiums in it. I think we need to discuss that, and we are discussing, and I think we need to discuss it more. Another point I wanted to make was that in 2005, at our strategic planning workshop, we spent a great deal of time articulating a vision for the City of Venice for the year 2020. In fact, we spent so much time that we memorialized that work in this document, which has been put on the dais and covered in plastic so we'll remember it day to day. And in the vision of Venice for 2020, we said that Venice has a charming, picturesque downtown with a small town ambiance. And the focus points under small town ambience were, and I'm reading, low-rise buildings and development, 4 stories or lower. And that's what we decided 2.5 years ago. That's what's on that sheet right there. Now, this project is asking for 80-story buildings covering 2.5 acres. The question is whether or not this development fits that vision. Now, I guess you have to decide whether or not this is part of our charming downtown. To me, it is. It's part of Main Street. It's what you see when you come into the island of Venice. It's what brings people here. It's part of our character. It's our personality. It's why people love Venice. There's no doubt that nobody wants to leave this property in its present condition. It needs to be developed, and it will be developed. The fact that we're in a temporary downturn isn't going to change that, and it may take some time. If you accept the proposition that our charming, picturesque downtown is the crown jewel of the city of Venice, then you have to ask the question whether or not a development as tall and as massive as this one effectively destroys what we're trying so hard to preserve and protect. If it doesn't, fine. But if it does, then I think you should reject it. I personally would be more comfortable if these buildings were 4 stories. And if they were 4 stories, if we simply remove 2 stories, you'd still have room in the building for, I believe, according to my calculations, 84 1,500 square foot condominiums that could be divided and locked out into 168 hotel rooms, half of which would be suites and the other would be traditional hotel rooms. So you would have on this 2.5 acre parcel, even in a 4-story building, a density of up to 33 living units per acre, or up to 67 hotel rooms per acre, a density which is twice as high as any other density in any of the other 23 zoning districts that we have. I think this is one of the most important decisions we'll ever make. And if we are in the least bit uncomfortable about proceeding today, or exactly whether or not we ought to reduce all 4 building heights or only a few of them, or whether we should taper them, or just deal with the buildings on the 2 western buildings and taper them, if there's any doubt in anybody's mind, then I think we ought to postpone this and give us some time to think about it. Because having heard the presentations, we may want to go back into those books and look at that binding development agreement and make sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's and that we are comfortable with it. Because the minute we approve it, we've approved everything that's been presented to us. We're not approving just a rezoning. We're approving everything: the site plan, the development, the height, the density, the number of units, the architectural details, the overlay, the balconies overlooking the sidewalk, the parking, and so on.
That's
so. I think it's important that we have a healthy discussion on this.
Mr. Simmons?